So magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat at tuloy po tayo sa ating study po tungkol sa conflict resolution. So titingnan po natin ngayon yung tips and techniques. So let's proceed without further ado. Okay, so tuloy po tayo. Welcome po kayong lahat ito. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat at time check 10.
In this section, we take a closer look at more techniques that can be used to resolve conflict. We'll cover logical thinking, emotional intelligence, communication, and problem solving. Not all tools are needed in all situations, however, so it's about using what's appropriate for the conflict in question. Emotions play a big part in conflict. They influence your thoughts, behavior, and decisions, even the business decisions, and they can be your enemy or your ally depending on what you do with them. When emotions are ignored, not understood, or not given air to breathe, they can negatively affect your business relationships, decisions, and potential success, not to mention your own mental health and personal relationships, which is why understanding your emotions and using them wisely can be of great benefit to you, even at work. That's where emotional intelligence comes in. When you are aware of your emotions, you know how to control them and you know how to express them. You are demonstrating high emotional intelligence. This means identifying and meeting the needs of others whilst taking responsibility for your own needs and feelings. This is what allows you to empathize with people, meaning you can really put yourself in someone else's shoes to understand how they are feeling. Then there's logical thinking, which is very useful for seeing the facts, being rational and staying calm under fire. If you use these together, you will be able to see a situation in its entirety. What happens when you have bread but no butter? It just doesn't quite work. If someone approaches a conflict with emotions only, the problem can quite easily go on unresolved. For example, an employee has an upsetting situation going on at home and it's causing them to fall behind on a group project at work. Even though empathizing with them is important, their project partner won't address the problem because they feel bad for their colleague and don't want to add to their stress. But a deadline is approaching, they've been working late to pick up the slack, and now they are stressed too. This escalates the problem. But if they use logic only, they think only of the deadline and the tasks yet to be done. They are at risk of forgetting to see their colleague as a human being. They start to make unrealistic demands and put even more pressure on their colleague. And ironically, this backfires. Their colleague feels ignored and overwhelmed. Their productivity worsens and the project falls further behind. When there's conflict, you need to look for the sweet spot in between, and you get that by using both logic and emotional intelligence together. One of the simplest ways to go about it is to get your thoughts written down so you can make sense of them. You probably won't need this for minor issues, but you can try this for more complicated conflict or where the stakes are high. Make two lists, one for the emotional factors, including any triggers, reactions, and feelings, and the other for logical factors, including things like what's happened to date, who is being affected, and any practical steps that can be taken. At this point, you'll have a better understanding of how you feel about the situation, but also about the reality of the situation. This approach works for any type of conflict, whether you're a manager or not, and whether the conflict is in your head or out in the world. The aim is to gather information before you communicate your thoughts. Communicating is key. One simple conversation has the power to undo or prevent a lot of damage if it's handled well. Most conflict can actually be prevented and resolved through clear, kind communication, whereas negative communication or a lack of it can cause conflict and let it fester. Even one lost email or one thoughtless word can lead to mishaps or pointing fingers. A lack of communication can also lead to making assumptions about what someone else is thinking or feeling, or about their motives or behaviour, but you never actually know what's going on unless you ask. As we touched upon earlier, You can use conflict to your advantage. It's your opportunity to learn, improve, and strengthen a relationship. One crucial thing about communication, however, is choosing the right time and the right place. It works best when people have enough time and privacy to discuss things properly.
So most conflict can be prevented and resolved through clear, kind communication. It's about choosing the right time and the right place.
There's a few techniques that can be really useful for improving communication. It's up to you. They can be used in general day-to-day conversation, but they also work very well during a difficult conversation. The first technique is active listening. Listening to the other person's side is crucial in helping you to understand their feelings and opinions. And if it's a conflict that needs serious attention, active listening is especially important. It means fully focusing all of your attention on the other person, on what they're saying and how they are saying it. To put this technique into practice, you can focus on three things: someone's words, their tone of voice, and their body language. These will give you a lot of information. A key part of active listening is to let someone explain their side without interrupting them, which is much harder than it sounds. As well as using positive body language, open, relaxed, and attentive, this helps you to stay calm and focused, and it encourages the other person to speak freely. This sounds simple and obvious, but active listening actually takes practice. It's much easier to get distracted, switch off, or to focus on your own thoughts and opinions while someone else is speaking. It's quite a skill to focus fully on the other person. So whenever your mind drifts off, bring it back and give your full attention to the person talking to you. You'll be surprised by how much information you can gather. This technique also has a positive impact on how the other person is responding to you, simply by you focusing and listening.
Well, active listening means fully focusing your attention on a person's words, tone of voice, and body language while they are talking without interrupting them.
Responsive listening is another useful communication technique. It works well when it's really important to get your facts right, and it's effective at preventing miscommunication. There's two steps. First, listen to understand what the other person is saying. And second, repeat their ideas back to them to confirm you've understood. This is often a case of paraphrasing and asking non-judgmental questions to clarify that you've heard them correctly once they've finished speaking. For example, you can say, "Just to double check I understand, you're upset about A because of B, and you think it's best if we try C." People have a habit of only hearing what they want to hear, whether it's positive or negative. So asking clarifying questions is a simple way to remove any bias or tunnel vision. It gives the person you're talking with a chance to fill in any important gaps that you may have missed. This way you'll walk away knowing what they have said and what they meant, rather than just your opinion on what you've heard.
It's all about responsive listening. It has two parts. Listen to understand what the other person is saying. Second is repeat their ideas back to them to confirm you understood.
Asking the right type of questions is another powerful technique. Again, it's up to you, but these are great for general conversation as well as conflict resolution. We're going to take a quick look at closed questions and open questions. Off the top of your head, which type do you think this is?
This is a closed question.
This is a closed question, which means the reply will be very short, like yes, no, or I don't know. This type of question can put the person you're talking with in a conversational corner, where it's harder for them to open up, or easier for them to avoid communicating. Open questions have the opposite effect. They encourage the person you're talking with to express their thoughts more fully, so it's much easier to get the conversation flowing. If you had to swap this closed question for an open one, which would you choose?
So it's A. How do you feel?
Correct. This is an open question because it encourages the person you're talking with to give you a more detailed response. As a general rule, open questions start with a how, what, or why. Here's a few examples of how you can swap a closed for an open question. Did it impact your work project? Can switch to, how did the situation impact your work project? Did you do that deliberately? Can switch to, I'd like to understand, why did you go about it that way? Is this the outcome you wanted? Can switch to, what would be the best outcome for you?
So open questions generally start with a how, what, or why. They can be very useful when you're trying to resolve a conflict.
Problem-solving skills are universal. They can be put to use in many situations. For example, when meeting different needs in group projects, allocating budgets, dealing with a customer complaint. The list goes on. Without this piece of the puzzle, you won't find a resolution to conflict. Sometimes it's as easy as returning the stapler you borrowed last week to solve the problem of the missing stapler, whereas more serious conflicts will need more time and attention. If people are involved in a conflict, finding common ground is very important, and it should be a first step with problem solving. Funnily enough, it's surprisingly easy. If you're ever in this situation, use this top tip to get you started. Admit that you share a common goal. When you're sitting on opposite sides, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that everyone actually wants the same thing, a solution, even if the solutions look different at first. You may go about it differently, but by stating this out loud, you all start from a place of similarity rather than difference. It's effective at bringing barriers down a little, especially if there's a big bridge to build.
Finding common ground is very important, and it should be a first step with problem solving. Both sides can start with admitting that they share a common goal to find a solution.
So far, we've covered simple, informal techniques that you can use to resolve a variety of conflicts on your own. But we know it's not always that simple. Ongoing conflict at work can make life pretty miserable. It will have a negative impact on your motivation and productivity, and therefore the quality of your work. More importantly, it can result in mental and physical health problems if it's causing long-term stress. You may even find yourself on the receiving end of really unreasonable or even threatening behaviour, and that's when your organisation will need to step in. In this section, we'll take a quick look at what you can expect from your organisation, but first we'll go through one more tool you can use, just a few simple steps to manage ongoing or serious disagreements. These conflicts often need more time and attention before achieving a successful resolution.